The silent discovery. The exploration vessel Horizon drifted through the emptiness between stars, its sensors sweeping the darkness for anything unusual. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck, watching the distant galaxies spiral in their eternal dance. She had spent 12 years in deep space, searching for signs of intelligent life. So far, the universe had given her nothing but silence. Elena was 38 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much emptiness. She commanded a crew of 47 people, all volunteers who had left Earth behind to explore the unknown regions beyond human space. They were scientists, engineers, and dreamers who believed humanity deserved to know what lay beyond the comfortable borders of their colonies. The ship's alert system suddenly activated. Elena's second officer, Lieutenant Marcus Okonkwo, called from the bridge. His voice carried excitement mixed with concern. "Commander, we have detected something unusual. An artificial structure, approximately 200 million kilometers ahead. It does not match any known human or theoretical design." Elena moved quickly to the bridge. The main screen displayed a rotating three-dimensional image of the object. It looked like a massive crystal, perfectly geometric, floating in the void. The structure measured nearly 5 kilometers across and pulsed with a faint blue light. "How old is it?" Elena asked. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the chief science officer, worked frantically at her console. "Initial dating suggests it is approximately 400 million years old. Commander, this predates human evolution by hundreds of millions of years. Whatever built this was ancient when dinosaurs walked Earth." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood the magnitude of the discovery. After centuries of searching, humanity had finally found proof of ancient intelligence. Elena felt her heart race. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of. "Prepare a shuttle." Elena ordered. "I am taking a team to investigate. Marcus, you have command of the Horizon. Commander. Regulations require—" Marcus began. "I know the regulations." Elena interrupted. "But we did not come this far to follow safe protocols. If there is any danger, the Horizon must survive to report our findings." "That is an order." 2 hours later, Elena floated in her spacesuit toward the crystal structure. With her were Dr. Tanaka and engineer Paulo Reeves, a quiet man from Brazil who specialized in alien technology recovery. Their shuttle hung back at a safe distance while they approached on JETPACKS. As they drew closer, the structure's surface became clear. It was covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change. Elena reached out carefully and touched the crystal. The moment her gloved hand made contact, the structure blazed with light. "It back!" Paulo shouted, but Elena could not move. Energy flowed from the crystal into her suit, into her mind. Images flooded her consciousness. She saw civilizations rising and falling. She saw countless species building great works, creating art, singing songs into space. Then she saw them vanish. One by one, entire civilizations went silent and disappeared. The vision ended and Elena collapsed. Yuki and Paulo grabbed her and pulled her back to the shuttle. Inside, Elena removed her helmet with shaking hands. Her face was pale and covered in sweat. "What did you see?" Yuki asked. A warning. Elena whispered. "The crystal is a warning beacon. It has been broadcasting for millions of years, telling anyone who finds it to stay quiet, to stop making noise, to hide." Back on the Horizon, Elena shared her experience with the senior staff. The crystal's message had been clear and terrifying. There was something in the galaxy that hunted intelligent species. This entity tracked civilizations by their electromagnetic emissions, their radio signals, their broadcasts. Any species that made itself known became a target. Dr. Tanaka worked through the night, analyzing the data Elena's suit had recorded during the contact. She discovered that the crystal contained fragments of messages from dozens of extinct species. Each message was the same. Stay silent. Stop broadcasting. Hide or die. The earliest message was 450 million years old. The most recent was only 2 million years ago. Whatever hunted these civilizations was patient and thorough. It had been killing for longer than humans had existed. Commander Okonkwo called a meeting in the conference room. Present were Elena, Yuki, Paulo, and the ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Sarah was young, only 26, but brilliant with signal processing and encryption. We need to inform Earth immediately. Marcus said, the entire human sphere has been broadcasting for over 400 years. Every colony, every ship, every station sends signals. We have been making noise the entire time. Elena nodded slowly. She had barely slept since touching the crystal. The images of dying civilizations haunted her dreams. If we send a message to Earth, we add to the noise. We might attract the very thing the beacon warns against. But if we don't warn them, Sarah said, humanity continues broadcasting blind. We deserve to know the danger. The debate continued for hours. Finally, Elena made her decision. We send a compressed data burst. Everything we learned about the crystal, the warning, the extinct civilizations. We send it once, then go silent ourselves. Earth can decide what to do with the information. The message was sent. Then the Horizon shut down all non-essential systems and drifted, listening, waiting. 3 months passed. During that time, the crew existed in eerie quiet. They communicated through text messages and hand signals. The ship's engines ran at minimum power. Every broadcast system was disabled. They became ghosts in space, invisible and silent. Then Earth's response arrived. Elena gathered the senior staff to hear the message together. Admiral Christine Park appeared on the screen. She was the head of Earth's Deep Space Command, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a reputation for making hard decisions. Commander Vasquez, Admiral Park began. We have analyzed your findings. The discovery of the crystal beacon and its warning has caused a significant debate among Earth's leadership. We have consulted with scientists, military advisors, and representatives from every human colony. Helena held her breath. After careful consideration, humanity has made its choice. We will not go silent. We will not hide. For 400 years, we have broadcast our existence, hoping to find friends among the stars. To stop now, to crawl into darkness and fear, that is not who we are. If something hunts the galaxy, we will face it. Humanity would rather die speaking than live mute. The message continued with technical details and new orders, but Elena barely heard them. She felt a mixture of pride and terror. Humanity had chosen defiance. They had chosen to remain loud in a galaxy that demanded silence. That night, as Elena tried to sleep, the ship's alarm screamed. She ran to the bridge in her nightclothes. The main screen showed something impossible. Space itself was tearing open. A rift formed in the darkness, and from that rift came something that should not exist. The entity was massive, larger than the horizon, but it had no solid form. It looked like living shadow, a darkness deeper than space itself. The thing moved with terrible purpose toward their ship. Sensors went mad trying to analyze it. The readings made no sense. The entity existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else, somewhere the instruments could not measure. All hands to stations. Elena shouted, engines to full power. We need to run. But the shadow was faster. It reached toward the horizon with tendrils of pure darkness. Where the tendrils touched the ship's hull, metal simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or melted, but erased as if it had never been there. Paula worked desperately at his console. Commander, The entity is absorbing our electromagnetic field. It feeds on energy, on signals, on any form of communication. Elena's mind raced. The beacon's warning made horrible sense now. This was what hunted civilizations. This shadow that ate light and sound and thought. And humanity had just announced they would keep broadcasting, keep making noise, keep painting a target on every human world. The horizon shuddered as another section of hull vanished. Crew members screamed as compartments lost pressure. Elena knew they were dying. Her ship, her crew, her friends, all being erased by something humans had no way to fight. Launch all data archives. Elena ordered. Everything we learned. Send it in every direction. Someone needs to know. Sarah's fingers flew across her console. Archives launching. Multiple vectors. Commander, if that thing tracks signals, we are just making it stronger. Asterisk, I know, Elena said quietly, but if we are going to die, we die making sure others learn from our mistake. The entity consumed more of the ship. Darkness crept through corridors like living smoke. Elena watched her crew fight and fail. Paulo disappeared into shadow while trying to seal a breach. Yuki vanished while recording final observations. Marcus stayed at his station, maintaining engine power until the very end. Elena found herself alone in the command chair. The bridge was the last section still intact. Through the view screen, she could see the shadow entity fully now. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a hole in reality itself. She understood finally what the ancient civilizations had faced. Not an enemy you could fight, but an ending you could only delay. The entity reached for her. Elena did not close her eyes. She wanted to see, wanted to witness. As the darkness touched her, she felt herself beginning to fade. Not dying, but being unmade. Erased from existence. Asterisk. Her last thought was simple. They should have listened. They should have stayed silent. The horizon disappeared completely. Where the ship had been, only empty space remained. The shadow entity lingered for a moment, feeding on the residual energy, then vanished back into the rift. Space sealed behind it as if nothing had happened. But Elena's final transmission reached its destinations. Across human space, colonies and stations received the data archives. They saw everything. The crystal beacon, the warning, the shadow entity. The death of the horizon. Humanity learned what lurked in the darkness between stars. And now they had to decide. Would they go silent as the ancient civilizations had? Would they hide and hope to be overlooked? Or would they do something else entirely? Something desperate and dangerous and utterly human? The choice would define their future. Either humanity would survive as frightened whispers in the dark, or they would burn bright enough to hold back the shadows. There was no middle ground. Not anymore. Asterisk, the fire rises, the destruction of the horizon sent shockwaves through human civilization. Every colony, every station, every ship received Elena Vasquez's final transmission. Humanity watched in horror as the shadow entity consumed an entire vessel and its crew. The images were clear and undeniable. Something ancient and terrible hunted the galaxy, and humanity had painted themselves as the loudest target. Earth's leadership convened an emergency session. The World Council chamber in Geneva filled with representatives from every human settlement. President Marcus Webb stood at the podium, his weathered face grave. Behind him, holographic displays showed the shadow entity over and over. A nightmare made real. We have a choice to make. President Webb said, the ancient civilizations chose silence. They chose survival through invisibility. But I ask you this, what kind of survival is it when we must abandon everything that makes us human? Our music, our stories, our voices reaching across the void? Counselor Zhang Lei from the Mars colonies stood. With respect, Mr. President, those ancient civilizations survived. They lasted millions of years by staying quiet. We have been loud for only 400 years, and already death comes for us. Perhaps wisdom lies in learning from those who came before. And what have they accomplished in those millions of years? Counselor Amara Okafor from the African Union responded, "They hid in fear while the universe went dark around them." Is that the legacy we want? Humanity cowering in silence forever? The debate raged for 3 days. Some argued for immediate cessation of all broadcasts. Others demanded increased military preparation. A few radical voices even suggested abandoning technology entirely, returning to a pre-industrial existence that produced no electromagnetic signals. While politicians argued, scientists worked. Dr. James Chon led a research team at the Lunar Science Institute. James was 42 years old, brilliant and obsessive. He had lost his sister on the horizon. Her name was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and she had died recording data about the entity until her final moment. James was determined to make her sacrifice meaningful. His team analyzed every second of the horizon sensor data. They studied how the shadow entity moved, how it fed, how it erased matter. James worked 20-hour days, surviving on stimulants and rage. On the 4th day, he made a breakthrough. He called an emergency meeting with Admiral Christine Park and the Military Science Division. The conference room filled with officers and scientists, all exhausted from endless crisis meetings. James brought up holographic models of the shadow entity. "I know what it is," he said without preamble. Or rather, I know how it exists. The entity is not fully in our dimension. It exists primarily in subspace, a parallel dimension that overlaps with ours. It only manifests in normal space when feeding. What does it feed on? Admiral Park asked. Electromagnetic patterns. James explained. Radio waves, heat signatures, light, even the bioelectric fields of living organisms. Anything that produces organized energy. The entity is drawn to complexity, to order, to information. That is why it hunts civilizations. We produce the most complex electromagnetic patterns in nature. So the warnings were correct. An officer said, "We need to go silent." James shook his head. Going silent will not save us. The entity already knows where we are. It has consumed the horizon. It has tasted human electromagnetic signatures. Even if we shut down every transmitter tomorrow, it will come to our last known locations. Silence is no longer an option. Then what do we do? Admiral Park demanded. We fight. James said, but not with conventional weapons. Missiles and lasers will pass through the entity because it is not fully material. We need to attack it where it actually exists. In subspace. He brought up new schematics. I have designed something I call the beacon pulse. It is a concentrated electromagnetic burst, focused and amplified to levels that should not exist in nature. Think of it as a scream so loud it becomes a weapon. The pulse will force the entity to fully manifest in normal space to feed. Once manifested, it becomes vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? To overload. James smiled grimly. The entity feeds on electromagnetic patterns, but every system has limits. If we hit it with enough concentrated energy, we can burn it out. Kill it by giving it too much of what it hunts. Admiral Park studied the schematics. How large would this pulse need to be? Massive, James admitted. We would need to concentrate the electromagnetic output of Earth's entire power grid into a single focused burst. Every transmitter, every generator, every source of energy firing simultaneously. It would black out the planet for hours, maybe days. But it might work. The plan was insane, dangerous, desperate. But humanity had run out of safe options. The World Council approved the Beacon Protocol by a narrow vote. They had 6 months to prepare before the shadow entities reached the inner colonies. Those 6 months transformed human civilization. Every nation, every corporation, every individual contributed to the effort. Engineers built massive amplification arrays in Earth's orbit. Power companies synchronized their grids. Military forces evacuated civilians from high-risk areas and prepared for the worst. Dr. Chun worked without rest. He refined the beacon pulse design, calculated optimal frequencies, and prepared contingencies. He barely ate or slept. His colleagues worried he would collapse before the plan could be executed. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the only survivor from the Horizon's senior staff, joined his team. She had been off-ship during the attack, conducting long-range communication tests from a nearby research station. The guilt of surviving when her crewmates died consumed her. She channeled that guilt into work. Sarah specialized in signal propagation and encryption. She helped James design the pulse pattern to maximize effectiveness against the entities. They worked side by side, 2 people united by loss and determination. One night, working late in the lab, Sarah asked the question that haunted her. "Do you think Commander Vasquez would approve of this plan?" James looked up from his calculations. His eyes were red from exhaustion. "My sister Yupi sent me a private message before she died. Just 3 words. Make noise matter. I think that is what we are doing. We are making our noise into a weapon. We are refusing to go quietly." The entities arrived ahead of schedule. 3 of them emerged from subspace rifts at the edge of the solar system. They moved slowly but deliberately toward the inner planets, toward Earth. Humanity watched them come with a mixture of terror and defiance. Admiral Park activated the defensive fleets. Hundreds of ships took positions throughout the solar system. They could not stop the entities, but they could buy time. Slow them down. Make sure the beacon protocol had a chance to work. The Battle of Sol began at the orbit of Neptune. Human ships fired everything they had at the approaching shadows. Nuclear missiles, plasma torpedoes, kinetic impactors. The weapons passed through the entities like light through fog. Nothing touched them. Nothing hurt them. But the ships kept firing, kept fighting. They knew they could not win, but they refused to surrender. The entities consumed ship after ship. Brave crews vanished into darkness, erased from existence. But they bought precious days. On Earth, the final preparations completed. Dr. Chun stood in the control center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching entities. They had reached Mars. The red planet's colonies had already been evacuated, but the entities lingered there. Feeding on residual electromagnetic signatures. Sarah worked at the communications console, coordinating with power stations worldwide. The entire planet held its breath. Billions of people watched the sky, knowing that in moments they would either witness humanity's greatest triumph or its final defeat. The entities began moving toward Earth, 3 massive shadows crossing the void. They sensed the planet's electromagnetic field, the billions of humans, the countless devices all producing the complex patterns they craved. To the entities, Earth looked like the greatest feast in millions of years. James activated the beacon protocol. Every power plant on Earth surged to maximum output. Every transmitter fired. Every orbital array focused on a single point in space. The electromagnetic pulse that resulted was visible even to human eyes, a blazing column of light reaching from Earth toward the approaching entities. The entities stopped. For the first time in recorded history, they hesitated. The pulse called to them with irresistible intensity. All 3 entities changed course, converging on the beacon like moths to flame. Now! James shouted. The pulse intensified. Earth's entire power grid, the combined energy of 8 billion people, focused into a single scream of defiance. The entities entered the beam and began to feed. They manifested fully in normal space, becoming solid and real as they absorbed the massive energy flow. More power. James commanded. Everything we have. The entities swelled as they fed, growing larger and more solid. Their forms writhed and pulsed with stolen energy. They were winning. They were consuming the pulse faster than humanity could generate it. Sarah saw the readings and understood. They were losing. The entities were too strong, too hungry. The beacon protocol was failing. But then something unexpected happened. The entities began to glow. The stolen energy was too much, too concentrated. They had evolved to hunt civilizations over centuries, feeding on scattered signals across vast distances. They were not designed to consume this much power at once. The first entity exploded, not with fire or force, but with light. Pure electromagnetic energy released in a cascade that lit up the solar system. The creature's form dissolved, its connection to subspace severed. It died screaming across every frequency. The second entity tried to retreat, but the pulse held it. The beam was too strong, the attraction too powerful. It thrashed and writhed, trying to break free. But humanity kept feeding it energy, kept forcing more power into its form. It exploded moments later, another burst of brilliant light. The third entity was the largest. It fought harder, lasting longer. For terrible minutes, it seemed like it might escape. But Sarah made a desperate adjustment to the pulse frequency. She matched the entity's resonance exactly, making the beam impossible to resist. The third entity shuddered and exploded. The resulting electromagnetic cascade could be detected across light years. Humanity had turned the galaxy's loudest signal into a weapon, and it had worked. Earth went dark. The power grid needed days to recover. But across the planet, people emerged from shelters to see the stars. The entities were gone, dead, destroyed by the very noise they had hunted. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Other species began broadcasting. Civilizations that had hidden for millions of years, watching from their dark corners, started making noise again. They had seen humanity's defiance. They had witnessed the impossible. And they wanted to join that chorus. The galaxy began to wake up. Not with whispers, but with songs. Dr. James Chon stood in the memorial garden built for the Horizon's crew. Commander Elena Vasquez's name was carved in stone along with her crew. He placed flowers there, thinking about his sister Yuki and all those who had died to bring humanity this warning. Sarah Kim joined him. "We did it," she said quietly. "We made their sacrifice matter." James nodded. Elena wanted humanity to face the truth, not hide from it. Yuki wanted knowledge to survive. I think they would be proud. We did not go silent. We roared. Above them, transmission towers hummed. Across the solar system, human ships broadcast messages to the newly awakened civilizations. Earth's voice carried through the void, loud and clear and unafraid. Humanity had learned an important lesson. Silence might preserve life, but noise created meaning. And sometimes, noise could burn bright enough to drive back any darkness. The galaxy had been silent for too long. Now it sang again, and humanity led the chorus. Asterisk.